I've taken some time and made some notes and wanted to cover the 6 basic paper types this evening. Of course, everyone knows glossy. Glossy is the one that has the high sheen. If you get it at the wrong angle, you can't see it because of the reflection of the light. Of course, it's bad about fingerprints, even though it's pretty durable paper and you can wipe them off, but best handled with some, cotton gloves or something. The thing about glossy is that you're going to see the finer details in that image. Very vibrant colors. The contrast is there. The one thing that I would suggest against on glossy print paper is normally not the best for framing behind glass. Normally, if you're going to produce a print with glossy, it's going to be in like a portfolio. You can mount it without putting it in a frame behind glass, which is becoming more and more popular. We tend to mount a lot of that on a gator board so that it's rigid, and then put a 1/2-inch backer on the back side of it so it stands off the wall. It's becoming very popular. The second one on the list is a satin finish. Some people get that one in glossy kind of confused. The paper manufacturers actually will refer to it also as a semi-gloss. So what they've done is they've changed the sheen of the paper to not create such a glare as the high gloss. Dependent upon the angle of light that's hitting the paper, you will still get some reflection, but not as bad as the high gloss. Coming in at number 3 would be the pearl finish. Pearl finish is well known in a lot of darkroom uses, as well as inkjet. The pearl finish, 2 variations, distinguished by the sheen and the coating that's actually applied to the paper to receive the ink in an inkjet process. The 4th one would be luster, which is very close to the pearl finish. Some people will say, I want them on luster, and they get them on the pearl finish and doesn't know the difference, actually. We probably print 90% of our prints here at Humble Camera on the luster finish. It's known to be a professional finish. It's good about not showing fingerprints, even though I normally do suggest handling the images with gloves when able. It works well for portraits. It works well for landscapes. A lot of your wedding photographers will provide proofs to their clients on that, on the luster finish as well. Coming in at number 5 is a matte finish. Unlike glossy, satin, and pearl, the luster that include the sheen, matte has no sheen. So it's a very dull, flat finish. I would say most of the time that's going to be used in booklets, pamphlets. Sometimes if someone wants to put it into a portfolio, it works well for that. But it's not going to be one that you would actually present to a client or necessarily have a enlargement to hang on the wall. Number 6 is the metallic paper. Metallic's actually growing in interest. We do get quite a bit of call for it. Metallic paper will really, in my opinion, work best with a lot of your landscapes. I've done several for a customer that had some nice waterfall shots, and it just really highlights that waterfall. And that was his main focus on that, even though the surrounding imagery in the photograph was nice as well, but it really picked up that waterfall. We have some customers that do a lot of photography when it comes to cars or motorcycles. So anything that has a shiny finish looks really good on metallic paper. Probably wouldn't suggest it on any type of a portrait. We've did some samples, and skin tones are not that great. But to each his own. Some people want it in the metallic finish anyway. Sorry, scrolling through notes. And I want to touch base on each of those and give a little bit more descriptive on the ones that we covered, the 6 that we covered, and maybe a little bit more detail in the usage and presentation of, sorry if y'all see that, getting notifications on my phone. As I mentioned, luster is one of our more popular finishes here at the shop, and for a good reason. It's classic, it's beautiful, the colors are rich and vibrant, lifelike blacks and whites, especially if you're doing a black and white photograph, print of a black and white photograph. It is the go-to paper for weddings and portraits. Like I mentioned, most of our clients do ask for that luster finish. It does have a slight reflective sheen to it, but not so much that it you have to do this number to see it like you do on the glossy. So slight sheen, slight texture, handles, you know, you can handle it without leaving behind fingerprints. Works well on everything from just small 4x6s if you want to send them to a family member, all the way up to, we've done 30x40s for clients, and really reproduces well. It does, as I mentioned, have a very subtle texture, and in my opinion, I put best uses: portraits, weddings, landscapes. The second one that I go into a little bit more detail on would be the glossy finish. Made a note here. It says sometimes you just have to shine. If you love the smooth and polished look, you're a high glossy fan. This distinctive bright and bold paper brings a slick, contemporary look to your photographs. The colors are very saturated, the whites are brilliant, and it offers a wide color range. As mentioned before, it comes with a disadvantage as well, and that would be the glare from the sheen of the paper. It is durable. The fingerprints, if they are, you know, by handling it without gloves, if you get fingerprints on it, it's pretty durable paper. You can wipe them off. I don't suggest a wet rag. Normally a microfiber cloth will work. We have some very non-abrasive pads here known as PEC pads. We sell a lot of that with the PEC 12 chemicals. For, you can use it for prints, you can use it for negatives, you can use it for slides. It's a good way to clean the negative slides and prints without doing any damage. Most of the time it's more geared towards smaller prints. However, we do get calls for larger, mid-size, and, you know, poster size and glossy finish. I noted the best uses for the glossy would be portfolios, street photography, landscape photography. Next one on the list would be the satin finish, also known as the semi-gloss. As I mentioned before, it contains less sheen than the standard high gloss paper. Viewing angle is improved, so you don't get the bad reflection from the light above or coming through the window. It does still give you the rich colors, good contrast, and a little less likely to leave behind the fingerprints, even though it can. Best uses for the satin finish, again, portfolios, street photography, landscapes. Next on the list is the matte finish. Matte finish sometimes is confused with luster. Matte, unlike luster, does not have the small amount of sheen. It is a very dull paper. I made some notes. Ideal for those with significant photo experience and an appreciation of fine art imagery. Paper has an excellent color reproduction, but has little to no reflection. And the texture on it is smooth, so it doesn't have the little ripples like you'll see in the luster or the other papers. I normally would suggest against it for black and white. The shadows and the rich blacks, it just doesn't come out very well. They become kind of muted. So you get a more of a darker charcoal gray than a true black, in my opinion. One thing to keep in mind with the matte paper is it doesn't have as much contrast as the glossy finish does, and that's again the difference between the whites and the blacks, especially leaning towards the blacks. You just don't get that true rich black like you would in the other paper. A lot of times the matte is used for larger portraits. A lot of times if you see a even extreme poster size, as large as maybe 6 foot by 8 foot or even larger, a lot of those will be printed on a matte paper because they're normally displayed in an area where you may have large windows and such, to where they want the people viewing that image to be able to see it without having to go to one side or the other and get away from the glare. It makes a statement while being subtle and no glare. Uses can be artwork. We do have some people that'll bring in paintings that they've actually hand painted. And whenever we're reproducing those, if they don't want them on canvas, a lot of times they'll suggest a matte finish for what they're wanting. Also portraits and still life. For the metallic paper, sometimes you just need your photographs to sparkle. Metallic paper has a unique sheen for stunning impact and depth to your artwork. I personally like the metallic for black and white. As I mentioned before, we have a lot of customers that photograph cars and motorcycles, and of course they normally want that in the color simply because of the bright colors that the vehicle may have. But I think a lot of the black and white landscapes that I've shot, I prefer them printed on the metallic. There's different grades of the metallic paper, so some are more subtle than others, but I like the real vibrant whites and blacks and midtones that I get in the metallic paper on the black and white. The surface on the metallic is also smooth like the glossy. The metallic paper will tend to cost a little bit more due to the process and that it takes to make it. But in a lot of cases, I would say that's money well spent for presenting your photography work. I noted that the best uses landscape, street photography, and black and whites. And not to be confused with the pearl, and actually I may have already covered matte. I apologize if I'm duplicating myself here, just going by my notes. The matte paper is a smooth, silky, non-reflective surface.
The CEO herself has been through some gritty fire training. That's Rachel in heavy fire gear.
Brad, you're muted. They muted everybody, but you need to turn yourself back on.
Okay. We cannot hear you, Brad.
There you go. Now you're on.
You're good now. Yeah. Nope.
So
We're good?
Yep.
about the last paragraph.
Okay. I'll go back over the matte. Like I'd mentioned, I may be duplicating some previous notes, but probably touch on a couple of other things that I didn't touch on previously. The deep matte has a smooth, silky finish, non-reflective surface, it's somewhat soft to the touch, and offers a gallery look, if you will. It doesn't work well with the dense shadows. Therefore, your blacks are not, in my opinion, not going to be a true black. They're beautiful. The prints that are made on matte, in my opinion, are beautiful and painterly. Like I mentioned, a lot of customers will have us reproduce their artwork, paintings mainly, on that matte finish, or sometimes, some cases, a canvas. Best uses: natural light photos, black and whites, and still life. The other options when it comes to presenting your photography pieces that you have printed, of course, there's canvas, there's metal prints, there's acrylic. The canvas is a well-known media now that is definitely getting into the mix with a lot of the different papers. Of course, the texture does tend to take away from some of the detail in your photograph, so keep that in mind. The high gloss will give you the most detail. The pearl and luster, which are similar, will retain that detail, but don't have the high sheen that the glossy does. So again, for portraits, wedding photographers, that's kind of their go-to. Going back to the canvas, it's a low-cost alternative to traditional framing. Normally, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the term gallery wraps. We offer a few different options when it comes to printing on canvas. Some people will want it printed on canvas and simply mounted on gator board so that they can put it in a traditional frame. Others may want a gallery wrap so that they can keep the cost down and don't have to have it framed. The gallery wraps, of course, come in, different depths as far as the thickness of wood, and normally would suggest the smaller pieces on a thinner 1/2 inch, and as you go to a larger piece, I recently did one that was probably 6 foot tall, 8 foot long, so it was quite a big piece. And we mounted that on a 2-inch, what they call stretcher bar, and it gives it a nice depth for hanging on the wall. Some of the disadvantages of canvas, of course, is the texture. You do lose a little bit of the image detail in the canvas prints. Of course, just like paper, there's different variances of canvas. Normally, what I would suggest is if you're having a canvas done, look for the presentation canvas. There's actually, Epson makes it, Canon makes some. There's different manufacturers that will produce that, as well as the papers. I didn't really want to go into detail in different manufacturers on the papers or the canvas as far as that goes, because each manufacturer may have 4 different glossy papers, 4 different luster papers, 4 different metallic papers. And normally that's going to be a little bit of trial and error to find out what is your favorite. As far as having prints done and presenting them on a metal substrate, which is going to be aluminum, the cost is up there. Metal prints are definitely more expensive than photographic paper. Normally, you have a few options. They will produce a metal print that has a white substrate added to the metal so that the metal doesn't show through. You get more vibrant colors. Contrast is better improved. When you print directly to metal, which is a dye sublimation process, where they have different layers. You have your cyan, your magenta, your yellow, and there's a UV clear protective coating that goes over it to keep it from fading if it's hung in a room, maybe near a large window or what have you. Without putting that white substrate, you see the metal produced through the image. I do have a few examples that I'd like to show. I don't know how well this is going to work. I'll try to keep the glare off of it. But this is a metal print that's done without that white substrate. So especially in the whites and the lighter tones of the image, you tend to see the metal show through the image. Same with the black and whites. As you can see, this is a high gloss finish without that white substrate. And the lighter colors show that metal through there. These are little desktops, pretty popular. This is a small canvas that we done for a customer, and I asked them if I could make a copy of it and have it here just as a small, easy to reach for sample to show customers. This is an example of the gallery wrap. You got your stretcher bar on the back. This is a very thin, like 1/2-inch wood, which works well for this size. It's probably about 11 by 17. And this is the gallery presentation canvas. Have to give photo credit to Mr. Dave Ripley. Shot this one in Maine. This is one of the landscapes that a customer shot whenever he was traveling the Northwest. Not sure exactly where this was. Should have made that notation, but I didn't. This is actually printed on a luster paper. And as you can see, if I get the light right on it, you do get a little bit of glare, but not so much to where you can't see the photograph. But with that just little slight angle adjustment, you can get away from it. This one, I mounted on the gator board and put the 1/2-inch backer on it. And the 3M command strips work well for these because they're very lightweight. You don't do any damage to your walls. No nails, holes needed. Of course, for a larger piece, you can add more. Normally, if I'm doing a larger, I'll add anywhere from 2 to 4. This is another example of a pearl finish. So similar to the luster, you still get a little bit of that sheen if you get the angle just right, but produces a very nice, vibrant, rich colors, nice contrast. Again, same thing, gator board mounted with that 1/2-inch on the back. Well, as you can see, this one has a lot of glare. This is a high gloss metal print, which would produce the same glare as a high gloss paper print. No matter where I put it, you're going to see a glare. Very vibrant colors, nice contrast. I would say this particular customer that took this photograph, he's actually gotten away from doing a lot of prints on paper and doing the majority of his work on the high gloss metallic finish with the metal aluminum prints. This one did have the white substrate added so that you could see the vibrant colors. The backing on this does have the same 1/2-inch standoff with a piece of gator board so that it sits flat against the wall. Again, fairly lightweight. And as I mentioned before, the process of this, it's a dye sublimation print, so no ink involved. It's done with layers with your cyan, yellow, magenta, and then a UV clear coat for protection from fading. If I can keep that from falling, sorry. This is another example of a pearl finish paper. This was the Big Boy customer, Connie Emerson, captured that one when it was making its rounds through Texas. Not sure exactly her location when she captured this, but thought it was a nice shot. She has some nice vibrant colors, nice contrast. Really like the perspective of the shot with it coming down the track and the steam coming up above. So we ended up doing that on pearl paper. And as far as presentation on your images that you capture, of course, it's always going to be your choice as to what you like the best. The pearl finish, luster finish, again, being similar, is, like I mentioned, the most common. We get the request for that more than anything else that we offer. You can present that in a frame. You can actually put it in a frame without a matting under glass, and it won't stick like the high gloss paper will. So if you're using high gloss and you want it framed behind glass, always a good idea to put a mat around it so that the glass and the actual paper are separated and not touching each other. Even in a climate controlled home, excuse me, you will have that, 35-40% humidity, and it will cause that glossy paper to stick to the glass over time.
Mhm.
We run into a lot of occasions where that's happened. Someone will bring it in and it's like, hey, how do you get this off? Well, you can try soaking it in water, but most of the time the true way to contend with that is to try to scan it through the glass, reproduce the image for the customer, which we've done quite a bit. The metallic paper, as I mentioned, I was hoping to have one here to show you, other than the one that I showed, the example of the lake and the mountain range in the background. And the customer picked it up this afternoon, a day early. It was a nice 20 by 30 printed on metallic paper of it was actually like a lowrider car. He had went to a car show and got a really nice low vantage point angle of this car, and the car looked like it was a mile long. And he had asked the customer if he would like to have a enlargement made, and so he was going to surprise the customer early with it this evening. So, any of the chrome, like in your cars, motorcycles, anything that is metal is going to really pop on that metallic paper. Bright, vivid colors do really well on the metallic paper. As you've seen in my bio, I'm more of a nature, wildlife, outdoors. So I tend to take more landscape images than I do of portraits or cars or anything like that. So I normally tend to print the majority of my black and whites on metallic, and then the color on the pearl finish. The pearl finish, in my opinion, on the color prints, you get the nice vibrant colors, you get the good contrast, but you get away from the glare of the glossy paper. And that's the main reason that I do. I take a lot of photographs of wildlife. We actually have a little bit of property north of Livingston, and it's a good place to go to, photograph deer. I've seen turkey, I've seen bobcats, coyotes. Of course, the feral hogs are everywhere. They're not the prettiest subject for photography, but I've gotten a couple that would actually present well. The wildlife images that I take, I don't tend to print a lot of large poster size, simply because I would run out of room to display them. So normally 8x10s, I like to put them in a folio and let relatives or friends, view them whenever they're not scrolling through the Facebook page and seeing them. That's where most of them get put, is posted on Facebook. But one thing to keep in mind is actually, I think it was my mom that mentioned it. Every time I go to my mom's, we'll break out a photo album and look through it and kind of reminisce. And, you know, that's almost become a thing of the past in some cases. We all have access to social media, and we can see everyone's photographs on the computer screen, on the phone screen, what have you. But having that hard copy print is you know, not too many people have those anymore, or even think about putting together a photo album. I have a lot of customers that come in and say, you know, do you sell just your basic, you know, 4x6, 5x7, 8x10 photo albums? And unfortunately, a lot of the manufacturers have gotten away from it. So maybe that's another reason that a lot of people don't have the albums any longer. But you know, there's always scrapbooks. You can make your own. And so I would urge everyone to, you know, have some printed, have some of your work printed. You know, display it in your own home. We have a lot of customers that will take their images and have them enlarged and framed or mounted on a gator board, and you know, that's what they're decorating their home with. Why not have your artwork in your home as opposed to something you buy, you know, online or Macy's or wherever. The canvas, we've actually done a couple of larger gallery wraps for our personal home, and you know, they present well in your home as well. So, you know, if you think that maybe you would like to have a gallery wrap, you know, pick some of your images to have those printed on, as opposed to, you know, going out and paying for someone else's handiwork. Why not present your own and show it off, be proud of it? The one of the things that I wanted to point out about paper as well is the process, and I won't go too deep because it could take all evening, and I know we have limited time. But most of your paper nowadays that is done with inkjet and such is what they call cast coating. So if we didn't put that cast, or I'd say we, the manufacturers of the paper, they didn't put that cast coating on that paper, then of course the paper is just going to absorb the ink and it's going to kind of bleed together, and then there goes the detail in your images. So the cast coating is what allows the ink to be laid on the paper without soaking through. And of course, there's just like anything else, there's variable thicknesses of paper weights. So a lot of times people think the thicker the paper, the better. Not in all cases. Depends on, you know, how you're going to present it. You're going to put it in a frame, you're going to mount it, or you're going to leave it just a loose image for maybe resale purposes or what have you. But the silver halide back in the day when we were working with chemistry is no longer, and now it has that cast coating applied to the paper, which of course your glossy paper will tend in some cases to be a little thinner, and as you go into your pearl and luster finishes, you'll notice an increase in thickness due to the process of the texture and the cast coating. So I'll leave that up to y'all to maybe do a little bit more homework on cast coating, and you'll find out a lot more information than what we have time to share now. But again, I wanted to thank you for allowing me to speak, and hopefully what I've shared has given you something to think about, something to continue to do some of your own investigating on, and get some of your own prints made. But that's it for me. Thank y'all.
Brad, will you have a few minutes for a couple questions?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely.
Okay.
Brad, this is Andy Howard, and I had a question on the metallic and gallery wraps. Do they come in custom sizes, or do you have set sizes?
Well, we offer custom sizes. Some labs will have set sizes like your original, 8x10, 11x14, 16x20. But gallery wraps and anything that we offer, from glossy paper, pearl paper, matte paper, metallic prints, canvases, we'll do any custom size that you need.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I have a question about preparing one's image for printing, and that has to do with the sharpening. Conventional wisdom is that glossy paper doesn't need as much sharpening as matte paper, but with all these other grades, I wouldn't know how to adjust my image for luster versus metallic, etc. Do you have any comments on that?
Yes, sir. The metallic paper, just like the high gloss, normally you don't need as much sharpening because you're going to get that nice sharp detail in that paper finish. On the luster pearl finishes, I would say it doesn't hurt to go a little more than you normally would with your sharpening to compensate for the texture of the paper. But again, you don't want to over sharpen. So that could be a little trial and error, but I would tend to say on average a little more sharpening than normal if you're printing on the pearl or luster finish.
Okay.
So when we go through our photography, our photos we've taken on RAW, and we go through and do our cropping and we do all the adjustments to the photograph, and then we export a JPEG image. So is that all you need, or do you need some color management settings to go with it?
No, sir. We don't really need any color management settings with it. Just, process your raw images. We can print from a JPEG or a TIFF, just like any other lab should be able to. But I would say one thing that we ran into recently, now that you brought that up, is we had a customer that didn't have her color profile set. So she was going in and adjusting her images and didn't have the Adobe RGB as a color profile. So when she came in, the images on her screen, I guess since she had it adjusted for that, were okay. But when we pulled them up, they were bad. So just make sure of double check your color profiles.
Brad,
Yes.
question here. So could you talk a little bit about adding texture to papers? So I've seen you can add like a canvas texture to a paper print, or a linen texture, or a pebble texture. Do you guys do those in your lab? And can you address pros and cons of using textures on paper?
Okay. First part of that question is we don't do that here in our lab.
Okay.
The texture that is on the paper, the canvas, or whatever media that we're printing on is the texture that we offer. I have seen some prints that, as you mentioned, that I've seen everything from a print done on a very thin glossy paper and then applied to a textured board to give it that linen texture. So as far as adding texture, there's different applications. Some of it's added to the face of the image, and then sometimes the image will actually be adhered to a backer board that has its own texture. So I personally haven't experimented with adding texture to the face of the image, but I have seen it done, and it looks pretty nice. You can pretty much simulate a canvas by doing so, by adding that texture to the face of it.
Okay.
I have a question, Brad. I always heard that printing portraits on canvas is preferred because of the texture on the canvas actually softening, the skin of the individual. Is that true, or what you would recommend?
There is some truth behind it. A lot of times, if we don't go in and post and take care of some things that the client, or I say client, whoever you're photographing and maybe presenting that to, they're going to critique it more than anybody else would, maybe even more so than you and I being the photographer. So they're going to notice every little blemish or anything. So canvas with hiding a little bit of detail does help to soften and does work well for portraits. The pearl and luster finish with that little bit of texture actually helps to do that, not to the extent of canvas, but does help as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any more questions?
Oh, I have a quick question. So with a lot of like these iPhones having pretty good quality of like cameras these days, would you recommend like a certain size to print, like a certain picture size? Like I've done a little bit of research that they say we don't recommend going this big or, you know, going over this certain picture size. But would you recommend like a good solid picture size without losing the quality sharpness of the picture you took?
Gotcha. Well, there's a lot of variables in that. So say for instance, if you have a fairly new phone, I have an Android Galaxy S10, which actually has a very good camera. I've been impressed with it. If I take an image with a camera and I don't do any cropping, I've gone as large as 16 by 24. So I wouldn't say there's really a set size or a max size. It's really going to be dependent upon the overall exposure and the aspect ratio of what that phone produces. I'm sure that you've seen where if you're capturing with a cell phone, you normally tend to get more of that HD. It's more of a, not panoramic, but more of an HD to where the proportion is wider than your standard shot is. It's not that 4/3 ratio. I would say most commonly when we have people that are printing enlargements from a phone, as long as they haven't overly cropped it, I would say that 8 by 12, 16, or I'm sorry, 8 by 12, 11 by 17 is a pretty common size.
Perfect, thank you.
I have a quick question about the process referred to as G-clay or G-clay versus just inkjet printing. I know that if you go to an art gallery and you're looking at, you know, art or photographs, a lot of times it'll be listed as that's what type of print it is. And I know it's an inkjet process, but is there a difference between that and coming to your shop and ordering a print on Pearl, or, you know, I just don't know what the differences are.
The G-clay prints are normally done on, most of the time it's going to be a matte paper. So it's kind of a dull, soft finish paper. And of course, that's always done with the high quality ink. We use the high quality ink. We just don't use that type of paper. So most of the time when you're looking or purchasing a G-clay, that is a reproduction of a lot of times a famous painting or what have you. But definitely the higher quality pigmented inks we use, like the Ultra Chrome by Epson, which is, I don't know how they came up with this number, but they say it is fade resistant for 99 years. So I don't know where they came up with that, but we've had really good luck. Actually did a test one time with that particular, when we first got our large format printer with that ink, and printed like an 8 by 10 or something, and stuck it in the back window of my truck and rode around with it for 5 or 6 months. And I was very impressed, even though my windows are slightly tinted, that print did not fade.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. Anybody else? Okay. Well, Brad, I know with our contest coming up, it's going to be virtual this year in October. However, the winners have been asked to have their photos printed and mounted and matted for showing, hopefully, everything's hopeful, right? You know, to be shown in sometime early next year. So I'm hoping that as our members come to your shop, you can really give them some guidance and recommendations so that we don't forget everything you told us tonight. And especially, I like the idea of course, using a paper that really shows off your image in the best possible way.
Right.
So that's what we would be looking for that.
Yeah, no, you have my email, Joan, and I don't mind, you know, you sharing that with the club members. So if they ever have questions, I mean, they feel free to call me here at the shop. They can email me with those questions. Love to see them come into the shop, just so that everyone knows we, of course, I'm here by myself, just like y'all are, and I'm not wearing my mask today, but we're open normal business hours. We do ask that you wear a mask and practice social distancing, just like we are in every other store that we feel comfortable venturing into. But yeah, I would be glad to assist in making recommendations on paper type, size. Now, as far as y'all's contest, will y'all be doing your own mounting and matting?
Actually, we have to do our own printing, and we will, well, of course, we could always use help for everything, but we have to order our mats and our mounts from one member. Zariah handles that for us. So we have to, so everything is exact for the gallery hanging.
Yeah, you don't want 50, 60 people ordering 60 different varieties of mats and qualities and everything else. So yeah, it's nice that it was uniform. That was my main purpose in asking.
Okay, yes, definitely. And the 50 shades of white matting, right?
Yeah.
Got it. So that's what we'll be doing. And of course, the contest is in October when we get more details. Are you, we'd like to invite you. We're trying to have our speakers join our Facebook page so they can see how we're doing, or we can reach out to you and share among us. And this is something we'd like to extend to you. So at any time you're having specials or you're doing that, or if something new is in, you can let our club members know and they can give you a shout out. And I think your email is just brad@humblecamera.
Humblecamera.com. Pretty simple.
Okay, hey, that's an easy one. Well, I thank you so much. Tonight was most informative. And every time I turn around, there's new papers out there. So I'm sure you'll be getting more in and everything else. So
yeah, there's a ton of them. Of course, you see a lot of variety in your basic, 8x10, 12x17 papers that, you can use in your advanced home printers.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's had a gentleman in the other day that had printed upwards of probably 20, maybe 25 images. His wife grows daylilies, and he had photographed them and named them and everything else. And he wanted me to print, or he printed them. He wanted me to mount them on the gator board for presentation.
Oh, okay. So
So
you'll
he
do that too.
had a wall of daylilies.
Okay. Perfect. Well, Brad, thank you very, very much again. And I give you a round of applause for a fabulous presentation.